Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping straight into something pretty interesting. The uh, the collision of blockchain technology and the auction world.
Right.
You probably know about blockchain, those secure, transparent, decentralized digital records. Sort of like shared spreadsheets that nobody can tamper with, all thanks to cryptography. A big change from, the old way with one central authority controlling everything.
Yeah, and then you've got auctions. Been around forever, right? Multi-party ways to sell stuff and figure out prices. Everything from like a simple English auction for art to these super complex government spectrum auctions.
Exactly. So our mission today, our deep dive, is really to explore how these two worlds, blockchain and auctions, are coming together, how they're creating new possibilities, maybe fixing some old problems across different industries.
And what's cool is our sources show both sides of this. They look at how blockchain is being used in auctions, but also how auction models are being used to make blockchain itself better.
Yeah, it's a really interesting mix of material. We have some articles on blockchain auctions in different fields, some analysis of where things are heading, and even a look at the code, like a smart contract for an English auction.
Should give us a pretty good picture.
Okay, let's get into it. First, big topic. How is blockchain actually changing auctions? The thing that comes up again and again is trust and transparency.
Oh, absolutely. That's fundamental. Because of how blockchain works, you get this unchangeable, auditable record of pretty much everything.
Okay.
Every bid, who won, the payments, it's all there.
So it cuts down on people wondering if things were fair.
Exactly. It reduces that information asymmetry you often see in traditional auctions. Everyone involved feels a bit more empowered.
And smart contracts play a big role here, right? These self-executing digital agreements.
Precisely. You can literally code the auction rules into a smart contract.
Yeah.
Things like when bids are accepted, when the auction ends, how the winner's decided, handling the payment, even transferring ownership. And because it all runs automatically when the conditions are met, you kind of cut out the middleman. And a lot of the potential for mistakes or even fraud just disappears. Fairness is baked into the code itself.
Like digital rules set in stone. Okay. And that transparency extends to the bidding process too, I gather.
Yeah, that's another huge point. Every single bid gets recorded on the blockchain. It becomes part of this permanent, publicly viewable history.
Everyone can see what happened.
Right, which boosts accountability, makes the whole thing feel fairer. You see platforms like OpenSea, for example, dealing with digital collectibles.
Uh-huh.
They use blockchain to show the entire provenance, the history of an item, who created it, who owned it before it's all laid out.
So hopefully fewer shady backroom deals.
The potential is definitely much lower. And it's not just about trust. We're also talking about efficiency gains, automation.
Okay, so how does the automation and cost reduction part work with blockchain and auctions?
Well, it comes back to those smart contracts again. They automate a huge chunk of the process. Tasks that maybe an auction house employee or some other intermediary used to do, tracking bids, checking if funds are available, finalizing the sale.
Right, all the admin stuff.
Exactly. That gets handled automatically. So operations get streamlined, admin costs go down, there's less chance for human error, and again, less room for fraud. The whole system can just run, smoother and cheaper.
Okay, that sounds really promising. Like, it could genuinely change how auctions work, but there have to be bumps in the road, right?
Right.
What are the main challenges people face when trying to implement this?
Oh, for sure. It's not all smooth sailing. Scalability is a big one. Some of the older, more established blockchains, think Bitcoin or early Ethereum, they have limits on how many transactions they can actually process per second.
Okay.
So if you have an auction with tons of bids coming in really fast, these networks can get jammed up, transactions slow down, fees can go up. Not ideal for a fast-paced auction environment. It's like a traffic jam on the digital highway.
The network can't handle the volume.
Pretty much. But people are working on fixes. Things like making the data blocks bigger, using off-chain solutions sort of like side roads to handle some traffic, and developing newer consensus methods like proof of stake that are faster and more efficient.
Makes sense. Need the infrastructure to support it. What else? Any other major roadblocks?
Interoperability. That's another headache. Right now, a lot of these blockchain networks are like separate islands. They don't easily talk to each other or to, say, existing traditional systems. And in auctions, you might have buyers, sellers, assets, all coming from different places, different platforms. If the blockchains can't interact, it makes things like cross-border options or moving assets between platforms really difficult.
Like different computer systems speaking different languages.
That's a good way to put it. So the solutions involve things like developing common standards so they can talk to each other,
Yeah.
building cross-chain tech bridges, things called atomic swaps to link them, and integrating better with existing systems using APIs and stuff, making connections.
Okay, connecting the islands. And what about just getting people on board? Is adoption a challenge?
Definitely. There's often a lack of awareness, maybe even some skepticism. People involved in auctions, auction houses, bidders, sellers might not fully get the benefits, or they might just be wary of new tech.
Understandable.
Plus, you need people with the right skills to actually use and manage these blockchain platforms.
Yeah.
So education is key.
So building trust in the tech itself and making it easy to use.
That's a huge part of it. Raising awareness, making platforms user-friendly, maybe even offering some incentives to get people started.
And just building these systems, the smart contracts for auctions, that sounds complicated from a technical perspective.
Oh, absolutely. Designing and writing smart contracts that are secure, bug-free, and cover all the auction rules. It's tricky, especially for developers new to the space. You really have to think through every possibility.
Yeah, like building super complex software where one tiny error could cost real money.
Okay, so we've talked about how blockchain is impacting traditional auctions, but what about completely new kinds of auctions that blockchain enables? That sounds exciting.
Yeah, this is where it gets really innovative. Blockchain's nature, being decentralized, opens the door for peer-to-peer auctions, much more dynamic formats.
Yeah.
You don't always need that central auction house anymore.
And NFTs are the big example here, aren't they?
Totally. Non-fungible tokens. These unique digital tokens that prove you own something specific online, digital art, collectibles, virtual land, you name it.
Right.
They've basically created entirely new markets. Digital artists can now sell authenticated, unique versions of their work, which wasn't really possible before in the same way.
Yeah, we've all seen the headlines about massive NFT sales.
For sure. That Beeple sale for $69 million really put NFTs on the map. And platforms like OpenSea, Rarible, Nifty Gateway, they became these major marketplaces. But, it's important to remember the market's been very volatile. Lots of speculation, right? Lots of ups and downs.
And the legal side of things, like what NFT ownership actually means, is still kind of being figured out.
A work in progress. Are there other new auction models emerging thanks to blockchain?
Well, the sources mentioned dynamic auctions. One really interesting kind of theoretical idea mentioned is the Harburger tax.
Harburger tax.
Yeah, it's this concept for like managing public goods or assets. The idea is the owner sets a price for their asset, but they have to pay a regular tax based on that price. Anyone can buy the asset at any time at the owner's declared price.
Yeah.
The theory is it encourages owners to price assets realistically and either use them efficiently or sell them to someone who will, because they're constantly paying tax on the value they set. It's a self-adjusting option, in a way.
That's a really different way to think about ownership and allocation. Okay, so blockchain's changing existing auctions, enabling new ones. Let's look at some specific sectors. Art auctions seem like a place where this is already happening.
Definitely. Blockchain, especially with NFTs, gives artists and collectors a way to trade digital art with built-in proof of authenticity. That helps fight fraud, which has always been an issue in the art world.
And it makes digital art easier to buy and sell, potentially.
Yeah, it can increase liquidity. We saw that case study mentioned Maecenas using blockchain for fractional ownership of a Warhol piece.
Right. Letting multiple people own a share of high-value art, that's pretty cool.
Very innovative. But again, challenges remain. Things like the environmental footprint of some blockchains, the regulatory uncertainty we talked about, and just getting everyone to agree on standards.
Okay. What about other areas? Energy trading came up. How does blockchain fit in there?
This is a really promising area, especially for local energy grids, smart communities, even coordinating electric vehicle charging.
How so?
Blockchain can create a transparent, trusted platform for people to trade energy directly, peer-to-peer, using different auction types like double auctions, where buyers and sellers both submit prices, or Vickrey auctions. This allows for more dynamic pricing based on real-time supply and demand, makes it easier to integrate renewable sources like solar from homes, and could optimize how EVs charge or even send power back to the grid. Imagine selling your excess solar power directly to your neighbor via an automated auction.
That sounds potentially much more efficient.
It could be, but privacy is a big concern naturally. You don't want your energy usage data public. So people are looking at permission blockchains where access is controlled and using privacy-enhancing tech.
Got it. And service allocation, things like cloud computing or supply chains.
Yeah, another interesting application. Using blockchain and auctions to allocate resources or services more securely and economically. Think about optioning off spare cloud computing capacity or managing bandwidth in virtual networks,
Okay.
or creating decentralized marketplaces for logistics and supply chains, maybe using reverse auctions where suppliers bid to win a contract. Even things like verifying employee skills could potentially use auction-like mechanisms on a blockchain for transparency.
So it's really about creating trustworthy, efficient marketplaces for all sorts of resources and services.
Okay, we've focused a lot on blockchain and auctions, but you mentioned the flip side, using auctions to improve blockchain itself.
Right. This is a fascinating twist. Auction theory. The study of how auctions work is actually being applied to make blockchains run better.
How does that work?
One example is managing the workload for blockchains that use proof of work mining, which is computationally intensive. Auction models, like the VCG auction, can be used to create mechanisms for miners to offload some of that heavy computation to, say, cloud servers or edge devices and figure out a fair price for that service.
So auctioning off the processing tasks to whoever can do it most efficiently?
Sorta, yeah. It's about resource management. Another key area is designing the transaction fee mechanisms, how users pay to get their transactions processed on a blockchain that's basically an auction.
Ah, right. You bid to get included in the next block. Exactly. And auction theory can help model and improve that. People are researching alternatives to the standard first price gas auction you see on Ethereum, looking at things like GSP mechanisms or even monopolistic auction designs to make fees more predictable and the network less congested.
Wow, that's clever. Using auction principles to fine-tune the blockchain engine itself. Okay, so stepping back. If someone listening is actually thinking about implementing a blockchain-based auction system, what are the really crucial things they need to keep in mind?
Good question. There are several key considerations. First off, choosing the right blockchain platform is critical.
Right.
You need one that fits your specific needs. How fast does it need to be? How much privacy do participants need? Do you need complex smart contracts? Ethereum, Hyperledger Fabric, Quorum, they all have different strengths and weaknesses.
Not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Definitely not. Second, partners are vital. You need the right tech providers, but you also need to work with regulators, maybe auditors, and definitely your end users. Getting buy-in and collaboration is key.
And we keep coming back to education and adoption.
Absolutely. Making sure people understand the why and the how and providing interfaces that aren't intimidating, that's crucial for getting people to actually use it.
What about privacy? Blockchain's transparent, but auction details can be sensitive.
That's a big balancing act. You want transparency in the process, but often need privacy for participant identities or their specific bids. There's a lot of work going into cryptographic solutions, things like multi-party computation, zero-knowledge proofs, homomorphic encryption.
Fancy math stuff.
Pretty much. And also things like mixing services. But each technique has trade-offs like how much computing power it needs versus how much privacy it provides.
So, still evolving. And the performance and scalability points we raised earlier are practical hurdles.
Huge ones. If you need high-speed, high-volume auctions, the underlying blockchain has to keep up. Permissioned blockchains, off-chain solutions, maybe even newer data structures like DAGs, these are all part of the picture for addressing performance.
And cost can't be ignored either, right? Those transaction fees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially on public, permissionless blockchains. Strategies like state channels or just really optimizing how the smart contracts are written can help reduce those operational costs.
And finally, standardization seems important for the future.
Yes. As this field grows, having common standards across different platforms and option types would make everything much easier, better interoperability, simpler user experience. Think about how internet standards helped everything connect. Something similar is needed here.
And underneath it all, just good option design matters.
Fundamentally, making sure the auction is fair, encourages honest bidding, achieves efficient outcomes, those core principles of mechanism design are still essential.
Okay. We have covered a lot of ground, so let's try to boil it down. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into blockchain and auctions?
I think the main message is blockchain has real potential to make auctions more transparent, more secure, and more efficient across many different areas. And interestingly, auction theory can also help make blockchain itself work better.
But it's not magic.
No, definitely not. There are still significant challenges, scalability, getting different systems to work together, the cost regulation that need ongoing work for this to really take off everywhere.
So a space that's moving fast on both sides. Okay, here's a final thought to leave you with. Given how quickly blockchain tech and auction ideas are evolving, What kind of completely new applications or maybe bizarre new auction formats might we see in the next, say, 10 years? Things that could really change how we trade value or allocate resources.
Mhm.
Think about what that means for trust, for who gets access, for what a marketplace even is. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. And if any of the specific areas we touched on, our energy services sparked your interest, definitely dig deeper into the possibilities and the hurdles in those fields. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.